and the Yorke Peninsula. But as a Narungagana woman, I need to pay my respects. So I pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I also extend that respect to their elders past, present and future emerging generations, for which your work is so important. And I'm also proud to be here as the interim CEO of the Lowitja Institute to showcase 3 amazing deadly research projects that we have funded and discuss the ways that our research can be translated into more impactful or better policies and programs that benefit the health and wellbeing of our people. We're also very proud to say that we currently fund 41 projects at the Lowitja Institute, of which 68% of those projects are led by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and I think that deserves a round of applause. So I want to talk a little bit about what sets us apart in our approach to the research, and it is our dedicated funding for knowledge translation and the ongoing support from the research and KT team. And at this point, I'd like you to put up your hand if you're a part of the KT team at Lowitja. They do an amazing job, and I must admit, as a new person coming into Lowitja, I'm really inspired by the energy and the innovation within our great team. So knowledge translation at Lowitja Institute is underpinned by our research principles, evidence-based frameworks and quality management. These activities aim to ensure we achieve research impacted by implementing KT strategies that move beyond those traditional publications, conferences and reports that we all love reading so much. That is what the Lowitja Institute is about, challenging the status quo in pursuing the best outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And we have 3 presentations today, and I'm going to go through a little bit about those projects, but I'll hand over after to our amazing MC, Josh, who will talk a little bit further about the bios of the speakers. So firstly, we have Yvette Rowe and Ike Fisher, and they'll be presenting about their approach to knowledge translation for their project, which is exploring the experiences of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander men throughout their partners' pregnancies and early postnatal period. Secondly, we have Vickie Saunders and Bianca Beetson, who will be discussing the translation of knowledge from their project on acoustic ecology. I knew I was going to stumble over that. There's always a word, isn't there? There's Felicia Watkin-Louis, Felicia Watkin-Louis, and our own Sanchia Shabatsky. Did I say it right? Shabasaki. I practiced that one too all night. And Linda Ahmat will be sharing the knowledge translation strategy of their first ever Torres Strait Islander researchers community of practice. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. We ask that you hold your questions till the end of all 3 presentations, but we do ask you to thank the presenters at the end by a loud round of applause. Following this, our rapporteur, which is Dr. Tess Ryan. Tess in the room? There's Tess. She'll give us her reflections, and then she'll ask us or open the floor for some questions from yourselves. Now, to introduce our MC, our very own Josh, to the podium to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about the housekeeping. Thank you, Josh.
Oh, thank you. And thanks, Janine. So my name's Josh. I'm also at the Lowitja Institute. I'm actually their events coordinator. And I thank you for the opportunity for letting me MC today. Just some further housekeeping. So we do have bathrooms. They're just where you entered, behind that curtain there. And in case of emergency, we've got the 2 emergency exits. So where we entered and just on my right over here. I feel like a flight attendant. So we will also be photographing and video recording today. If you would not like to be video recorded or photographed, if you can just raise your hand and one of our staff members will just notice you and we'll try to ensure to keep you out of the frame. So for those here today who are eager social medias, or hashtaggers, we do encourage you to hashtag today. And our hashtag for today is KT That Works. So that's KT That Works, hashtag KT That Works. So welcome, and I hope that you take the chance to reflect on how you might do things differently and be part of a driving changes in policy and practice and to benefit Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I'd like to introduce our first presentation for this morning, Yvette Rowe and Ike Fisher. So Dr. Yvette Rowe is from the University of Queensland's Mater Research Institute, and Ike Fisher is from the Institute for Urban Indigenous Health, or widely known as IUE. Thank you. Yeah, you're right to come up. All good. So I'll just hand over. Get this.
This is for all the tall people. They need to come down to. There's a thing. The thing about Queensland, you can only be a certain height to work in the state. So, Ike's quite tall. So first of all, we'd like to acknowledge that we are on the sovereign lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Acknowledge that we stand on the shoulders of people that have come before us in many generations, that we're in a room full of countrymen from lots of sovereign nations, and also to recognise our non-Aboriginal colleagues who are also allies in what we're trying to do. And from where we stand, research is a political act of our sovereignty. So I'm a Nyingana Yarra woman from the West Kimberley, from Broome and Derby. So this is really freezing weather. This is proper cold. And then when we came from Brisbane last night, girl was freezing overtime. And I'm going to get Ike to introduce himself. So before we start, acknowledgement and to Lowitja Institute for funding our research, but also the support and staff that we have gotten from staff, which has been terrific and really supported us on our way. But also the main acknowledgement is the voices from the men that have participated in our research. So we are very much custodians of their story, and we're going to tell a story about what they're telling us. So I'll just hand it over to Ike. So we're going to do a bit of a tag team here this morning, and if we've got any questions, please keep them to the end.
Thanks, Yvette. Yep. So my name's Ike Fisher, as Yvette mentioned. I'm a Birri-Gubba man from Central Queensland and Gubbi from South East Queensland. I've also got ties to the Torres Straits of Darnley Island, which is an eastern island of the Torres Straits. I work for the Institute as a research officer on many qualitative research projects in South East Queensland. I'll hand it back to Yvette.
Yep. So as I was saying, we come from sunny, beautiful, glorious, where you don't have to wear jumpers, South East Queensland. And just to point out, this is Queensland, most of you would know, we're right down here, where you don't have jumpers. So the exciting thing about Queensland is we have probably about 65,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in that region. We're one of the fastest growing regions, and so one of the things for knowledge translation for us is using that evidence to do forward planning for such a fast growing population. So we also acknowledge that the work that we do is on the sovereign lands of the, I've forgotten it, many. Okay. So what's the work that we're doing? And you probably all read the abstract and thought, oh, what an amazing project. Well, actually it is. It's one of the first projects that's talking to first-time dads to get their experience, their aspirations, their fears, their strengths, their role model, about what they anticipate will be like to be a first-time dad. And I work in the field of midwifery and health service research, so talking to dads is a new experience for us. So we realise that dads have a voice and we want to hear it. Why are we here? Because we want to be told? No. Birthing is our first ceremony. It's the most important ceremony. So coming from the womb into the outside world is all about connection relationships. It's critical both culturally, spiritually, and physically. And that's the things that grounds us about our research. And fathers and dads are critical to that journey, critical to that ceremony. And often in the midwifery space is those voices aren't heard. To embed or contextualise where this research is being put, it actually is embedded in a research that's been happening for 4 years that is essentially focused on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander mothers and babies, about trying to get the best start to life, birthing in our community. And it's all been focused about women. So what we're going to talk to you today is about what are dads' aspirations. And the key partners to this research 2 community organisations. The second longest running Aboriginal community controlled health service in Australia called Brisbane ACHES, and the Institute for Urban Indigenous Health, which is in Brisbane, and the Mater, which is a tertiary hospital which on average births about 10,000 babies a year. So they sort of know what they're doing, and our sector also know what they're doing. So this project has come out of that. All right.
So a lot of you probably have seen this cartoon that was in a newspaper a few years ago now, which labelled as Indigenous men as negative fathers, negative role models in communities. So with this project that we're working on, we're trying to challenge this picture to say our men are strong leaders, are strong fathers within our community. So we use yarning as a method to capture the men's stories. We use this because yarning has been used within Indigenous culture for tens of thousands of years through storytelling, our song lines, and still is continued on to this day. So we use the yarning to answer the research question by using social and collaboration yarning and therapeutic yarning as well, which I'll go into a bit later, exactly how we did that. This is where I come into the story. So it was decided by the chief investigators that because this project is for Indigenous young fathers, that it should be led by men. So men were doing the recruiting, doing the yarning, and also evaluating all the data as well. So with that, I bring in my skills as a community researcher to be able to lead the yarns as well. With the yarning, we didn't want to just have random questions just going out, so we developed a framework to get into some of the issues that men may be facing in life with family, their connection with culture, their overall health and well-being, but also bring out the strengths and connections in these stories as well, so not just focusing on the negative issues. Our first step was to have collaborative yarns to find out what service providers are out there that young men may be coming into contact with. So in the red, we got the Aboriginal community controlled service providers, and then also the white is the Mater Hospital, where their partners would be going in for their antenatal appointments and also where the baby will be born as well. So as you can see, there's quite a different range of health areas that cover there. So the recruitment engagement process was important. We sat down many times to figure out how we can best approach these young men to recruit them, have these yarns with them, but also keep them engaged, because we were doing yarns with them before baby was born, but also after as well. So we had to keep them engaged over 8 months, and a lot of you may know our mob can be very transient and we can lose contact. So it was really important to figure out how to keep them engaged, to capture that story of what it's like to change to become a father as well. So this was how we started the yarn with them. So the social yarning is basically to break the ice, to create that comfortable, calm environment for them where they feel safe in expressing their story, using language that they feel comfortable with, and making a connection with them, finding out who their mob are, what hobbies, what interests they have. As you can see from this example, it was just basically an icebreaker conversation. And being mindful as a researcher, you're always trying to answer a question. So yarning can always go into different directions, but always trying to bring back that conversation to answering the question. As you can see from this one, it can be hard because it can go in different directions and they can go into different stories, but always make sure you're bringing out that question, that answer, sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't see it change. So, as I said before, the yarns can go many different ways, and a lot of times you find the men expressing things to you that they probably never mentioned to anyone else. So many times it went into a therapeutic yarn. With this, you're allowing them to share their feelings and keeping that safe space for them and just being there and acknowledging their story to be able to share it with you. With this specific one, this interview went for about 70 minutes because this bloke had a lot of trauma that he was just releasing, so just giving him that time to express, and it adds value to their story. Yeah. And then this is where our knowledge translation comes into it. So once we had these yarns with the dads, we gathered all that information and then went back to the young fathers in community and made sure the information that we had was true to them, and added created social yarns to connect them back to the research we did. So we did this by these 3 different community days. So one was through the Momentum program. We also did a dad's barbecue through the Mums and Bubs Hub Christmas party that they had. We invited the dads to come down, steering around the barbecue. If there's any Queenslanders in the room, they should know who's standing next to the barbecue in the Broncos jersey. That's Steve Renouf, Australian NRL great. So the dads loved having him there to come down, have that yarn. He's a dad himself, so they're all sharing experiences. And we also got in touch with the Daily Choices Men's Golf Day. So once we got the confirmation from the dads that this is true to them, we had to go back to the collaborators and give our findings back to them. So we attended seminars and meetings with them to share that this is what the dads are saying. And we also use a social media platform to run campaigns. So where to from here with the knowledge translation? So what we've already done now is the Mums and Bubs Hub in Brisbane. We have challenged that cartoon that I showed you earlier about the negative stereotypes of dads, and we've actually started a wall where we've invited dads to bring in pictures of themselves and their children and put it up to celebrate their journey on fatherhood. And we are also, from the findings as well, one of the main things that was coming out was dads wanting to engage with other dads in community. So we're looking at running community days for dads to come together and across southeast Queensland in a sort of a mums and bubs setting, but for dads to bring their children and spend time with other dads and the children as well. And at the moment, the Institute for Urban Indigenous Health is in the process of integrating a men's health strategy that will be carried out across southeast Queensland. That will be about family planning and parenthood, yes, sorry. So there was a lot of key learnings from this project. This is my last slide. What stood out for me the most was, from my heart, was the Indigenous men are wanting to be the best fathers they can be. They want to be providers and protectors for their family, but are wanting help to be able to reach that goal for them. So that's what we're hoping to be able to support them through that journey of fatherhood. And that's our knowledge translation. Yeah.
Thank you, Ike and Yvette. Just a reminder, please, we're going to give you the opportunity to have your questions at the end, so we'll get all the presenters back up after all the presentations have finished. So I would like to start by introducing our next presentation. Our presentation's from Vickie Saunders and Bianca Beetson. So Dr. Vickie Saunders is from the Griffith Criminology Institute at the Griffith University, and Dr. Bianca Beetson is the Director of Contemporary Indigenous Art Program, also from the Griffith University. So I might just ask them to start coming up now. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh, for that. Yuala, Budabai Dundigu, Wurundjeri, Mundana, Yilana of the Kulandanti, Naya Nula Nugala, Naya Yimbaya Yarana Undanu Yantilelu, Vickie Saunders, Naya Gungriambi. Hi, I'm Vickie Saunders. I'm a Gungri woman from Mitchell in southern central Queensland, and we're here today to talk about a project we're doing with the Brisbane Women's Correctional Centre with Ani Melita Orcha, Ani Estelle Sandow and Dr Claire Walker from the Elders Group in the Corrective Services there. And while they're unable to be here today, also part of our presentation and central to our research team are Dr Sara Woodlands, a performance and arts-based researcher at Queensland Conservatorium of Research Centre, and Dr Leah Barclay, the lead researcher in acoustic ecology at Griffith. And co-presenting with me is Dr Bianca Beetson, Program Director of the Contemporary Indigenous Arts Centre.
Narawanya. I'm Bianca Beetson and I'm a proud Cubby woman from the Sunshine Coast, Queensland. See, another Queenslander. Queensland represents in the room today. I also have Wiradji and Cookie Yalanji heritage.
Thanks, Bianca. Oops. I began our presentation with as yet untranslated Gungri words to acknowledge the presence of the land and the country on which we meet, and any elders who may be present here today. I also use these words to acknowledge the traditional custodians for the place that we're in, and their ancestors, past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the organisers for this forum, Lowitja, and it's an honour to be here. And last but not least, I use these words to acknowledge you who are listening here today. Nyanula Nagala, I see you. I acknowledge your existence, your ancestors, and your place in our story. It's been said that we live the stories we tell, and we tell the stories we live, and that when we share our stories, we become part of them. And today, you're becoming part of ours. Today, we're here to share our stories of an arts-based research project that we've called Listening to Country, and the knowledge translation strategies we're using to share what we've learned. And because we've had this question before when we presented, no, it's not about listening to country music. It has come up. It's actually about exploring the value of acoustic ecology, or the impact of the soundscapes, the landscapes of sound that we all live within in our environment, on our environmental, social, physical health and well-being. And our story today is about how we're using listening as a performative knowledge translation strategy, and the sounds of country to translate ways of knowing and experiencing cultural connection, maintenance and well-being amongst Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander mothers, aunties, grandmothers and sisters currently living off-country, in prison, on the countries of the Turrbal, Yagara and Yurrgurrpul peoples. Bianca, Sarah and Leah will talk a little bit more about this soon, but before we begin, I'd like to start with a short listening exercise and an invocation to the country ever present under our feet. Many years ago, Miriam Rose Ungamar Bowman introduced the word Dadiri to draw attention to the different ways that Aboriginal peoples in Australia listen. Dadiri means deep active listening that is comfortable with silence, and in Gungri we use the word Yimbaya, which also means respect. And I was told, when you're listening, respect is automatically there. Our talk here today is about listening to the country that's central to our well-being and that's always speaking to us. So if you feel comfortable doing so, please close your eyes and focus your attention on all the sounds that surround us. Listen to the different sounds that are all around us. If you listen, focus your attention on the sounds as your breath going in and out. You may want to take a deep breath now. Breathe in and out. And as you do so, focus on the sound that it makes. In a little while, I'm going to ask you to hold a minute's silence to acknowledge and honour the traditional custodians of this place and their ancestors. During this minute's silence, I'd like you to listen carefully to all the sounds that surround us in this room, in this place. In this place, in a busy modern city, there's no such thing as absolute silence. We are always immersed in the soundscapes that surround us and move through us. Always the vibrations of many sounds are moving through us. As you breathe in and out, listen to the sounds in the distance, those that are far away and those that are here in this room. Perhaps you can hear the faint sounds of planes flying high above us. Shift your attention to the sounds that are nearby, to the sounds of people breathing, to the sounds of your own breath as you breathe in and out. During the 1 minute silence that we will be inviting you to hold soon, when I stop speaking, try to feel for the sounds that exist beneath all of the sounds that surround us, those that we can hear and those that we cannot quite hear with our ears, sounds that we sometimes feel through our feet. Underneath all those sounds is the sound of the country we stand in, ever present, ever speaking to those who would listen. Beneath the concrete and tar, beneath all the steel and timber, far beneath is the metronymic sound of the heartbeat of the country. If you listen, you will hear it. Please join with us in a minute's silence. Thank you. To close this introduction, I'll reiterate the Gungri words I started with. These words were not allowed to be taught the year I was born. The words I started with roughly translate as, hello, it's a beautiful morning here on this country, the country of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I see you, I acknowledge your existence, and the existence of all our ancestors, past, present, and future. I hear you. In this place we are listening. We are listening for the laughter of children in this place. Yen Tulalu, may peace be within you.
Before we talk about how we are translating that knowledge for policymakers, we'll talk a bit more about the project. Let's play a short recorded video from Sara Woodlands. Let's hope it works. Come on now.
Our project came out of listening. Over several years I've been doing theatre projects in Brisbane Women's Correctional Centre, and in my discipline of applied theatre, the process of sharing stories and making performance is how we as a community make meaning and generate knowledge together. So we'd made cross-cultural performances about the history of incarceration and the stolen generations, and one of the more successful of those projects had been a radio drama. In this process of making the radio drama, we discovered that the women engaged really deeply in the process of making soundscapes and sound effects. And through this, they were achieving what Rice calls acoustic agency. So it was enabling them to counteract the oppressive soundscapes of the prison, for example, doors slamming and radio chatter and squeaking footsteps, with their own sonic practices to make the radio drama.
What you just heard then was the sound of the prison landscape. So Sarah's going to just tell us a little bit more about how the project came about, and then after that I'll actually talk a little bit about actually physically what we did.
So the previous theatre and radio drama projects led to a direct request from a group of Aboriginal women at Brisbane Women's Correctional Centre to create a culturally relevant relaxation CD, a sound recording for the purpose of reducing stress and connecting to natural environments and to country. And so this is what began our cross-disciplinary conversation as a group of artists and scholars.
The project was an intensive program running from January to February this year, so it's only a newly finished project. It involved a number of co-facilitated workshops by our interdisciplinary team. These workshops were developed to allow the women to build trust, capacity, and to facilitate the actual creative process, which enabled the transfer of knowledge. Some of these activities included post-it note poetry writing workshops, sound meditation, drawing, music and percussion workshops, and, all importantly, recording each other's voices, footsteps, breaths, heartbeats, and their poetry they'd created. And another really important part of the project, which happened right at the beginning, was this project we now call the River of Words, which you can see in the slide. The River of Words formed the background of this project. So with the River of Words, we got a whole heap of post-it notes, and I asked everybody to think about their belonging place, because I understand not everybody in the centre knew exactly where their country was from. So I said, let's think about this place where you feel good, where you feel energised, and where you belong. And they wrote words that related to this belonging place, how it felt, how it made them feel, or where the physical place was. And we created this big circle in the room, and in the middle of the room was this imaginary fire. And everybody threw these scrunched up balls of paper into the fire. Then they were asked to actually sort of all jump in and grab them and lay them out on the ground in whichever order they wanted. And what happened was this amazing river of words. And it became this beautiful, poetic kind of river. And we asked a few of the women to record it. This was our very first day. You know, I used it as an icebreaker, but it became very much the backbone and the structure of how we actually created the soundscape. Overall, about 14 women participated in the project on an ad hoc basis. However, the ad hoc nature of their participation was one of the challenges of working in a remand centre, with people being released and transferred regularly. We worked alongside the women to create a visual music score based on yarning and thinking about the sounds of country of their belonging place. Then undertaking recordings of the sound particular to place, culture, fauna and flora, as depicted or as described by the women. These sounds were played back to the women, whose voices were filtered through these recorded sounds of country. The women then worked with a team to compose the final soundscape, and on the final listening day, some of the women said they'd forgotten that they were in prison for a moment, and I think that was really key to what we were doing. Vickie.
Thank you. So, trying to get this thing to work. So our knowledge translation, as I said before, our knowledge translation strategy is framed around listening, and it's a relational model aimed at strengthening the work that the elders are already doing in the prison. It's also focused on using our existing relationships and networks to focus attention on acoustic agency or having some sort of control over the soundscapes you're immersed in a prison. And it's about the wellbeing effects of paying attention to and actually having time to listen. Few would disagree in Indigenous health research that strengthening Indigenous connection to country, Aboriginal connection to country, is a critical element in all of the efforts to improve Indigenous wellbeing, and that elders play a pivotal role in this. At the heart of Indigenous research, methods of Indigenous knowledge generation and application are participatory, communal, experiential, and reflective of local geographies of place. So where we were had quite an impact on what we were doing, and it will evolve in the different places where we tell this story. Knowledge translation in this context is inherently experiential and felt. In arts-informed research, the audience are participants in the creative production of knowledge, and they are also part of the community being targeted. And this is reflected in how we've approached our knowledge translation strategies. Each of the elements in this table build on existing relationships in our commitment to the use of creative and arts-informed approaches to research. So knowledge translation and acoustic ecology is not so much about what is being said here, but rather on how you are listening to it. And I know that even as I'm speaking, you're hearing something else as you read this slide. I'm not going to read through this list. Instead, I'd like to reiterate that our work is grounded in the practice and principle that is becoming widely known as Tadiri, listening in an Aboriginal way, in a more spiritual way, to the world around us, to the country that's central to all of our well-being. And as I mentioned before, Tadiri is a word from the Daly River people that Miriam Ungama Bowman Rose introduced to describe the practice of listening with more than our ears. It's a whole body listening. And as a practice, we've incorporated this in every aspect of the project, but we don't always call it Tadiri. In Gungri, it's Yimbaya, which also means respect. In Turrbal, where the prison is located, the word for listening is Binang. And for Leah, it's called Acoustic Ecology. And we'll just listen to Leah tell a little bit more about that now. Or maybe.
Hi everyone, my name's Leah Barclay. I'm an acoustic ecologist and a sound artist, and I'm really passionate about the way we can use sound to really connect communities to the environment. So sound has this amazing ability to provide an embodied engagement with a place and time, and deep listening can make us feel immediately present and connected to our surrounding environment. So this idea of contemporary acoustic ecology has really been a catalyst for a global movement of artists that are exploring the temporal complexities of climate change and revealing invisible ecosystems and connecting communities to the social, cultural, ecological and political layers of changing environments through sound. Now this work all really resonates with Murray Schafer's initial idea of acoustic ecology in the 1970s. This idea that we should attempt to hear the acoustic environment as music and we should take responsibility for its composition. So sound is this inherently interdisciplinary medium which can be a challenge in a policy context when we're looking at this idea of listening as embodied knowledge translation. But I think what we've seen, particularly in the last couple of years, is this rapid interest in sound across so many disciplines, whether that's advancements in environmental science, demonstrating how much we can learn by listening to the environment, or more recent research in medicine and health that's really showing us how sound truly affects our body and how listening to environmental sound can have positive impact on not just our body but our mind as well, of course. So all of these interdisciplinary possibilities, the value of listening is at the heart of acoustic ecology and really the core of this Listening to Country project. Thank you.
We are on the early stage of knowledge translation, having the project just wrapped up. But what we've taken from this project is the potential to build on the inside and beyond the prison walls. So we are currently exploring the possibilities of using this methodology as a tool for working in other areas of the health, aged care and social justice systems. Working with dementia patients, imagine being able to trigger stories from the elders. I've worked quite a bit in that space, and the sounds. I mean, when we were sitting in the room with the old people, they were like going, "Oh, that sound reminds us of being back in Cherbourg and washing our clothes on the rocks." Also assisting people in palliative care to assist with the stress of dying, working with biorhythmic feedback to sort of, be able to help alleviate that. And of course, and most importantly, working with kids and youth in care. I'm currently exploring working with some in a partnership with ACE in Brisbane in relation to developing an app. And of course, more prisons. We are keen to work with prisons with more stable population this time. Remand's not ideal. And I'm keen as a teacher to trial it in the classroom. So what we actually have, our next steps are, in May we'll visit the Townsville Elders and community groups and the Townsville Correctional Centres to explore the possibilities of building capacity to extend the project there. This is building on Vickie's already strong connections in child protection and family wellbeing in Townsville. We will soon visit the Sunshine Coast Elders and community groups to explore the possibility, again, of using this approach and a partnership with pelican projects, bringing youth at risk and taking them back to water country. We have confirmed an immersive audio installation at the Lowitja Institute conference in Darwin in June to showcase the work in its entirety. And we'll also be hopefully doing the same thing at the Baringa Fire and Water Festival in Mitchell and the Horizons Festival on the Sunshine Coast. Also, we're also confirmed an international collaboration with Associate Professor Brenda Morrison, Director of the Centre for Restorative Justice at Simon Fraser University. She'll be visiting in May to develop a large multi-partnership grant she is involved in. And we're looking and involved in, which looks at restorative justice with Indigenous women in Canada. And we've also been invited to undertake a keynote presentation about listening to country at the Performative Arts and Justice Symposium at Massey University in New Zealand in September. But on a local level, we've set up a website that is password protected for the women upon their release to be able to share it with their family and have access to it. We've had approximately 70 downloads already. But at the heart of it, it's about enhancing the work the elders do. We are hoping that the elders will be able to use the CD when they visit the women in prison. The women also have access to the sounds, well, the soundscape through the prison computers and the CLOs, as well as they all got a CD. However, as arts-led research, the most important way of us to transfer this knowledge is, of course, through having people listen to it, because when we listen to country, you can feel it in your body, and only when you can feel it in your body can you begin to understand the true benefits of listening to country.
So, hopefully this one will work. So to conclude our talk, we'd like you to listen to another part of the soundscape. We were originally, during the minute silence, planning to play the first part of their soundscape, which is part of but it didn't work. So another part of the soundscape that the women created for their CDs. So woven into this soundscape is an unspoken story and part of the poem they've created out of the river of words. Their voices have had to be altered, of course, because due to the restrictions in the prison, but this is what they wanted to say, and this is their creation and their knowledge. Thank you. No, back.
Oh, it's embedded in here. No. Escape.
Technology.
We've been having fun.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Bianca and Vickie. I'd like to start to introduce our final presentation for today from Felicia, Sanchia and Linda. So Associate Professor Felicia Watkin-Louis and Linda Armat are from the Indigenous Education and Research Centre at James Cook University, and Dr. Sanchia Shibasaki is the co-owner of SenseMakers 4, Smarter Care, and also the Director of Research and Knowledge Translation at the Lowitja Institute. So I'd like to hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks very much for that introduction, Josh. We'd like to begin our presentation by acknowledging that we stand on the land, the sovereign nations of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We also acknowledge and pay our respects to their ancestors, elders, past, present and future. Thank you, Josh, for that introduction. Felicia, Sanchia, I'd also like to, you've met some of my other colleagues here, Linda Armat and Margaret Harvey. I'll just get you to stand, just say hi to everyone. Thank you very much. We are here on behalf of the Torres Strait Islander Researchers Network. Today we are presenting our experience, and we acknowledge and thank the Lowitja Institute for supporting our project both financially and also the marvellous contribution and support that we've had from staff from the Lowitja Institute as well. We hope that by the end of our presentation that you might be motivated, encouraged, inspired to join us on our journey of creating a knowledge mobilisation community. But before our presentation, we'd like to show you a quick clip which was produced and directed by Marg Harvey and her company Josie Sparks, and it gives you a bit of background about our project.
We acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet. We pay respect to their ancestors and elders, past and present. We acknowledge our Torres Strait ancestors, our elders, families, and communities. The Torres Strait Islands are situated between the northernmost tip of Australia and Papua New Guinea. It is the most intact northern extension of the World Heritage listed Great Barrier Reef ecosystem. The Torres Straits is internationally known for its diverse flora, fauna, and endemism that contribute to Australia as a globally distinct ecosystem, and is a key breeding ground for endangered species such as the green turtle and dugong. Our histories, epistemologies, beliefs, experiences and needs are unique and separate to the Aboriginal people of Australia. The Torres Strait Island people are strong and resilient. We have met many obstacles head-on, but how we rise to the oncoming challenges the environment and social issues bring will determine our survival. In 2017, a group of Torres Strait Islander researchers and community members established a knowledge mobilisation community of practice known as Meribabwai Ngalpan Wakaitamamai. Now a network, this group is unique as it brings together for the first time Torres Strait Islander researchers with a broad range of expertise. We share a passion for the empowerment of Torres Strait Islander people to shape our own futures. One way to support empowerment is to make research knowledge more accessible to Torres Strait Islanders through knowledge mobilisation. Our key message is know the risk, own the risk, and flip the risk. As knowledge mobilises, our journey has included an ultra-connector presentation at the 2018 Canadian Knowledge Mobilization Forum. The theme was Mobilising Evidence for Human Rights and the Sustainable Development Goal.
Flip the Risk refers to research knowledge complementing experiential knowledge to help our people make well-informed decisions about adapting to the impacts of climate change, thereby enhancing the well-being and resilience of our communities, just as we have accepted and adapted to past environmental changes.
We also brokered networks and links with knowledge mobilisers in Canada, including First Nations, Métis and Inuit people, to lay the foundations for future collaborations. Our network recognised that one of the most effective ways to mobilise knowledge in our community is through stories, music, dance and visual art. As the Torres Strait is already experiencing the impacts of climate change, we focused on the issue of rising sea levels. Using theatre and film expertise within our group, the complexity of knowledge translation of climate change issues were explored through a 15-minute arts-based performance in a way that captured people's hearts and minds. It was presented at the opening night of the 2018 Cairns Indigenous Art Fair. It's 2050, and a tidal surge has sunk the last of our Torres Strait Island homes beneath the depths of the rising sea. Culture clings to a lifebuoy. Is there anybody out there?
"60 years from now, you Flower Island people listen. Them island go underneath water. You Flower will be like seagulls roaming the skies forever with nowhere to land."
In addition to the performance, we are working on other mechanisms to mobilise knowledge into practice, including games-based problem solving. Torres Strait Islander Researchers Network are drawing on the Know the Risk, Own the Risk and Flip the Risk framework to address complex environmental and social issues.
So before we continue, we'd like to set the scene about how we view knowledge translation. And I think, Sis Vickie, you were talking about the experiential knowledge. And we acknowledge that knowledge translation occurs in both a research context and an experiential context. And drawing these two worlds together is complex. Like others in Canada, we view KT as an umbrella term. Under this umbrella sits activities such as knowledge mobilisation, knowledge exchange, knowledge transfer, and so on. Based on the widely used Canadian Institute of Health Research definition of knowledge translation, KT has two very important parts. One part is the effective management of knowledge, shaded in yellow. This is the collection, storage, analysis, interpretation, and use. And use in this case includes dissemination, exchange, and ethically sound application of knowledge. The other part, and this appears to get lost in knowing and doing of KT, is impact, which is stated in pink. Did you achieve what you set out to achieve? And importantly, how do you know? So it's interesting that we're having this discussion of KT in a academic or research context. But our people, Torres Strait Islander and Aboriginal people, we're the original knowledge translators. We've been translating knowledge since millennia. This image by the late Billy Missy reflects KT. It depicts a spotter positioned on the mast, directing the canoe, and the hunter poised with the harpoon. Based on experiential knowledge systems, hunters to this day know that there are different ways to hunt green turtles, which is dictated by the tide, the moon, and whether it is night or during the day. They also know the traditional way of hunting green turtles during the mating season, which occurs in September and October, when the water is becoming warm. They also know that single male turtles are always found where others are mating. The impact of an experiential KT approach was the survival of generation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including our customs, our beliefs, our values, languages, songs, and so on. Most recently, Torres Strait Islander people, along with our brothers and sisters in other island countries around the Blue Continent, are feeling the effects of globalization and environmental change, as shown by these images, which includes rising sea levels, loss of homes and lands, depletion of fish stocks, pollution of seabeds, and microplastics in our marine life. Our ancestors knew there were solutions to these emerging problems. We, the next generation of Torres Strait Islanders, recognise and understand there are solutions that can be drawn from the experiential knowledge system and the Western research knowledge system. However, drawing together these knowledge systems to do KT must involve the people who are seeking the solutions, that is, the knowledge users, and the people who want to use the solutions, also the knowledge users, to be empowered to do so. So for KT to work, it's helpful to know what to own, when to own it, and why this is important. Let's start with knowing what to own. If we are serious about knowledge translation, speaking to everyone in the room here, we need to understand KT, not just the definition, but also the system, the processes and resources that go hand in hand with KT. For KT to work in our project, we had to know it to own it. This involved adopting a knowledge mobilisation approach, identifying our topic, issue and objective, and developing a KT plan. So firstly, our knowledge mobilisation approach. Based on our individual experiences and discussions with our Torres Strait Islander family and friends and community, we knew the gap in trying to address our social and environmental concerns was that knowledge users struggled to find the right knowledge at the right time for the concern at hand. Our network was made up of Torres Strait Islander researchers and community members, so we adopted an exchange and integration approach to knowledge translation that was underpinned by the following mechanisms. We had regular meetings, which included face-to-face meetings, teleconferences and video conferences. We had collaboration to undertake 2 knowledge translation events, which Sanchita is going to speak about as well. And we had other activities such as collaborating with people outside of the network, for example, our international collaboration with knowledge mobilisers in Canada, a public seminar in Canberra, and meeting with colleagues from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and also participation at seminars and workshops. We next had to identify our KT topic, issue and objective. Our topic was social determinants of health and wellbeing for people living in Torres Strait Islander communities. Identifying the issue involved scanning what was out there. A review of the literature found very limited evidence of a comprehensive approach or a policy and strategic statement that described approaches to Torres Strait Islander sustainability. In the absence of strategic guiding documents, we developed a planning framework based on the Legantham Prosperity Index and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and we workshopped this with our network and our community members. The selection of issues was also dependent on the following criteria. Firstly, it had to be deemed an important social determinant of health and wellbeing for Torres Strait Islander people. Secondly, at least one group member has to have knowledge or research expertise in the topic and issue, and if not, we had to co-opt an expert outside of our group. It had to be doable within the time frame and the budget, and it also had to be realistic. And as shown on the slide, the priority issues were social capital, natural environment, safety and security, governance, education and health. Based on discussions held to identify the topic, we developed the following objective, which was to enhance social capital through the mobilisation of knowledge about adaptability and resilience initiatives and strategies to address natural environment concerns relating to Torres Strait Islander people. And that's a good research kind of objective, isn't it? Yes. I read that out. Sounded very professional. Planning for KT involved drawing on several models and frameworks, such as the Barwick KT planning template, the York University's knowledge mobilisation model, 2 stickiness frameworks by Chip and Dan Heath and Jonah Berger, and our own no-own flip process model to develop a KT plan. So we decided to plan for 2 KT events in 9 months. Don't suggest you do that. It's one of our learnings. Anyway, it's a good example of why when you get a group of thinkers in the room, step away from the whiteboard, people. So the outcome from our KT planning process was as follows. Our KT goal was to generate interest and awareness within the target audience to own responsibility, to identify and implement adaptability and resilience initiatives and strategies for climate change. The selected KT strategies were multifaceted, and the other important point was this step, that network members took responsibility for parts of the plan. So in our network we had people ranging from a whole range of backgrounds and experiences, but as we showed from the video, that we had one of our PhD students take the lead in a really important event. So that's an important part of our capacity building strategy. Sanchia.
Thanks, sis. Retrieve this mic. I've got a big voice, I don't want to yell. I'm going to break the windows here. Hi, everyone. Thanks, sis. So now that we knew what to own, we had to walk the talk and know when to own it. So when to own KT is about moving on from the talk about KT and doing the walk of KT. For example, our presentation today was deemed a KT opportunity. As such, we planned this event using elements of the KT planning template. So as you can see, in addition to our presentation, we also drew on other strategies to achieve our goal. So we were all wearing our high-vis vests, and there's some symbolism attached to that, which I'll talk about soon. You would have received a pamphlet or a little postcard about our project and asking you to join us develop our knowledge mobilisation community. You can see our Instagram frame, and we invite you at the end of this discussion to come over and help us monitor and evaluate our presentation by sticking a paddle pop stick in one of the bottles that best reflects whether our message came across. So when do you own KT for it to work? During our presentation today, it was right up from the commencement of the forum when you walked in, through to our presentation and at the end of the forum. So the next slides will provide examples of when we own KT for the events we did throughout our project. Our first KT event, as we showed on the video, was a short theatre-based performance titled Lowitja, The Water is Rising. The performance was directed by network member we mentioned before, Mark Harvey, and her company, the Josie Sparks. The content for the performance was sourced from research knowledge and experiential knowledge from our hour there on the photo, our Jeffrey Anabawaya. When did we own it? So we mentioned we did the performance at the opening night of the Cairns Indigenous Art Fair in 2018. We knew KIAF opening night would draw a lot of people, and we were guaranteed a prominent place as one of several opening performances. So although KIAF and the performance provided us with an opportunity to get our message across, we needed to draw on other strategies to promote the message, the performance, and our network. This is all this mob in action. So more importantly, we also needed a way to know whether we had achieved impact, and we'll discuss this later. So the additional KT strategies we implemented were targeted email invitations, community radio announcements, the wearables. So the symbolism of the high-vis vest is that climate change, rising sea levels. So it's like you can see in the middle, the jacket, this life safety jacket. So it was too expensive to buy life safety jackets, so we had to go with these. Yes, it didn't go that far. And Qantas wouldn't give us their leftover jackets, so we just had to go with this. So we also had a verbal pitch and pamphlets, and we drew a print. So today, that's part of today's at lunch. If you participate in our monitoring and evaluation, we'll give you a raffle ticket, and then at lunchtime we'll draw for this print from our sister here. From our brother there in Cairns, Tommy Powell. Yeah. So our second event was a game-based problem-solving taster night with Boho Interactive on Thursday Island in the Torres Strait. Now, Boho is a collective of Australian artists and game designers. This group works with scientists to create interactive performances and games exploring concepts from systems science, complexity theory, resilience thinking, games theory, and network theory. Boho organised several games that focused on systems thinking for solving complex problems. So our KT vehicle was the taster night, and the sample games were our KT products. The additional KT strategies we implemented were targeted email and hand-delivering invitations, community radio announcements, short presentation, our Instagram frame, and please, you can come and take a photo in our Instagram frame, you feel free. And yeah, active demonstration game, and champions. So far we've described what to own, when to own it, but why bother? So what? So a key element of KT is impact. To work out if your goal was achieved, you need to integrate elements of monitoring and evaluation into your KT events and activities. So as we mentioned today, we, not just wearing these things, we will monitor and evaluate it with the bottles over there. So how did we do this for our events? So the impact of our theatre-based performance was measured using SMX tests. The following question was sent to 80 people who attended CIAF and provided informed consent to participate in the evaluation. And this was the question. The message we wanted to get across through our event at CIAF is that future sea level rise will impact on the lives of Torres Strait Islander people. And both experiential and research knowledge need to be used by communities to help them respond. How well did this message come through for you? So they just had to respond with an A, not very well, B, quite well, C, very well, D, unsure, E, did not attend the event. And what E means is that, I don't know if any of you have gone to CIAF, but yeah, so that you can be inside looking at all the artwork, whereas the performance is quite away from the artwork. You might well know. So as shown in this slide, 46 people responded to the SMS message, and most people selected very well. The following responses were also obtained from 33 guests who we sent a targeted invitation to attend the event. And the first one was, I saw the show last night. It was absolutely brilliant, mind-blowing. It was futuristic, but the message was so clear that I surprised myself, I got a bit emotional. The second one, when the show went through, I beget the message, and it was clear with all that action of how we need to be aware of our environment. And then the last one, it was innovative. I've been telling people it's a visual lecture. We also tracked social media metrics. This included Twitter, newspaper reports, and Facebook. That's why Felicia reckoned don't do this kind of thing for 9 months. It's crazy. We measured the impact of the taster night by assessing responses to invitations and participant feedback. The network invited participants by email and hand-delivered invites to organisations. A rough count on the night suggests 28 people from these organisations attended the event. The network also encouraged participants to answer the following question as they left the event. How useful do you think an interactive games approach might be in assisting our communities to build resilience in the face of social and environmental threats? Participants responded by dropping the paddle pop stick into 4 bottles that were labelled unsure, not very well, not very useful, fairly useful, and very useful. Most guests, 81%, found the event to be very useful. So let's recap. How do we do KT that works? Firstly, we needed to know it, to know what to own. Secondly, we had to walk the talk and do KT throughout our project. We highlight that this may not be suitable for all projects and contexts. And finally, we monitored and evaluated what we did to see if we had achieved our goals. So in short, what's on the slide there, knowing what to own, when to own it, and understanding and why this was important. So what were some big outputs and impacts of our project so far? Well, one is thanks to Lowitja Institute and Christina over there. Our short doco was retweeted to a presentation that Fran Baum did and also to the World Health Organization. So thanks, Christina. We also went on to receive an Australian Research Council grant to look at the application of our no own flip process model, particularly from the perspective of knowledge users. So on behalf of my sisters here, Bala, and the Torres Strait people that were involved in this project, we thank you for this opportunity to share our learnings with you. We also wish to acknowledge and thank the Lowitja Institute and our Torres Strait Islander family and friends, and we say kai moe aso. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanchia, Linda and Felicia. So I'd like to now introduce our rapporteur for this morning, Dr. Tess Ryan. Dr. Tess Ryan will facilitate questions and answers from the floor and guide us in distilling the key themes and messages from the presentations and discussions. So welcome, Dr. Tess.
Hi everyone. As Josh said, I'm Dr. Tess Ryan, strong Birpai woman originating from Taree in New South Wales. Thanks for having me today. I'm kind of blown away, to be honest with you, and I am just so really excited about what we have to offer as people and what we showcase to others. It's a really exciting time to be involved in research, and every time I come to one of these things, my heart just becomes really, really full, and my mind is a little bit blown. So you'll have to forgive me for if I stumble a bit on words. It's because I'm just so incredibly proud of everyone that's presented and just of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander research in general. I think we have heaps to be proud of. So, looking at the 3 different research projects that have been presented today, what really struck me is just the amazing strength of our own knowledge. And I think sometimes mainstream don't necessarily see it, but also we kind of just take it for granted that we have, you know, thousands of years of culture behind us and a whole heap of stories, and part of us is just like, well, this is just us, this is just our stories. Our narratives, our stories, our yarns, they're all incredibly powerful and legitimate, and this is all the research work that I see coming through across lots of various different disciplines. What I really loved about our first presentation with regards to dads and birthing is that I've done a bit of work in the past on media discourse, and it frustrates the Jesus out of me that often the representations that we see, especially through commercial news, is so very different from what we've grown up with, what our upbringing has sort of taught us. And I've often focused in my own research on Aboriginal women, but I have talked a lot about Aboriginal men in terms of that hideous political cartoon done by Bill Leak. But what I really loved when that actually came out is the response from us, the Indigenous dads Twitter that sort of lit up after then. And I think we often push back. It's just that sometimes we just don't see it. So by doing it in a way of research, it legitimises, once again, it gives it sort of a credence, makes it much more credible to other people. Go, oh, actually, yeah, Indigenous dads do this stuff. And it frustrates me that we have to go down those paths. But I think the implications of something like that research can be really powerful. I'd really love to see the opportunity for that to be embedded in some policy frameworks, because as we've talked about, often we just see that with regards to Aboriginal mums and birthing, and what potential that project actually can have is quite amazing. With regards to the second project, Listening to Country, I love the opportunity to sometimes just go out. I'm not here on my own country, but to go out where I'm living and just stop and take some time to listen to the environment. And I think sometimes it's really underrated, but I think there's also a lot of really amazing research coming out about the politics of listening has been around in the last few years, but also having that acoustic agency, as you were talking about, I think is really important. And often we don't recognise that the listening, the environment around us, that soundscape, is actually important to connection, as you were saying, to spirit. I think I can't possibly imagine what it's like to be an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman in prison, and you're in a very cold environment, very stark environment, to have a complete elimination of those sounds of country, and for it to be replaced with something that's very, very different. How you then build a space of connection and belonging in that environment. So I think that's really important. And considering the overrepresentation for a number of reasons of Aboriginal women in prison, I think it's really vital. But I think also what was really fascinating for me is that research can be transferred to so many different areas. I was thinking about Aboriginal people that are in hospital environments where they have to be away from country for long periods of time, and how, often they'll just say, look, I deny the medical treatment, I want to go back home. That's part of the reasons why they want to go back home. They want to be on their land, they want to feel and sense and listen to their land. So that's really exciting for me. And with regards to the last project, I love the fact that getting mobs of us together and seeing the strength that we have it's an empowering thing for the self, but also what we can use with those cohorts, building a community of practice, building a network in that space, and taking that information back to community. It's something that people know, but they don't necessarily, once again, connect with. It's something that can often be, well, we know that we live, sort of a seaside environment and that the waters are rising. But being able to actually place themselves within that environment and thinking about how they can own this space. I really loved the fact that model can once again be transferred elsewhere. Wouldn't it be great if we saw that sort of model used once again in policy to go, well, how do we, in social determinants of health, how do we own it? How do we flip this space? How about giving us some of the power back to be able to take control of these issues? So I think what I walk away with regards to this is just an amazing sense of power and strength in our communities. I definitely think it's time that we start shouting all of this stuff from the rooftops, and we need to start seeing it translated once again and embedded into government initiatives. We need to see research accepting us, more research councils, and going, yes, we want to fund this research. It sounds really exciting, and we need to start shouting from the rooftops as well that we have an amazing wealth of knowledge and information that we can share, both with our own communities and outside of those communities. So that's some of the stuff that I took away from with regards to these projects. We might open it up to the audience to get some discussion and some commentary. So we've got some microphones out there. Yep, anyone wanting to share? Come on now. You must have been blown away as I was. Yes?
Yeah. What am I? I've got a very loud voice. I think for me, Jennifer Dar here. I've worked in community control sector for a long time, and so the project event that you presented on first actually quite moved me, because I was working out in Western Queensland, and we'd actually created a space where we could have kids, but our babies immunised at any time of the morning. And what we did when we created the space, we saw dads turn up with the kids to be immunised, and that was just so heartwarming, because dads are important in our families, and culturally that's always been the way. But I think over time we've seen a shift away from that, so it's really heartening to hear the good things that's coming out of Oyui with that. And the listening to country stuff, I thought that was just amazing, and I can't, like you, I cannot imagine what it would be like sitting in a prison and being separated from country and not knowing and hearing and feeling and sensing and touching that on a daily basis. The last project really did impact me in the most profound way, because where I am situated right here, and I'm very fortunate to have been given the opportunities I'm given, but I'm also an applicant on a native title claim, which is up in Queensland in the Mackay region, and so that stuff really draws on me in how do we as custodians of country actually take that responsibility on and, like you say, own it, but equally flip it. How do we get to a point where yes, it is country, and how do we preserve that? How do we do that in a way with knowledge and information that allows us to do that in a kind of holistic but systematic way? So, yeah, thank you for all the presentations this morning. Amazing.
Who?
Julie Andrews, Convener of Aboriginal Studies at La Trobe University, Yorta Yorta and Woiwurrung. I just wanted to congratulate all these researchers here who are using our Indigenous knowledges in the research framework with the strength and power that we've been taught from our elders. Bringing the content from our community into the research framework is very important for us as researchers. We have a duty to do that, and it's usually coming from the heart when we do it ourselves. So when we're talking about transition of knowledge and so forth, it's very important that it comes from the Aboriginal space and Torres Strait Islander space. Really loved your approach and inclusion of the arts festival there. That is something unique, I thought. And bringing in the change with the water and the possible refugee status that you guys will have. These are the kind of things that we need to actually bring to the forefront. And I like the way that we're all using different methods. We're not staying inside we're not being, disciplined to stay inside disciplines. We've got to start thinking outside the box and start to use our cultural knowledge to link up with each other, and don't have to stay inside either health or social sciences or anything, because all our knowledges incorporate all of those disciplines. So, and I like the way that everyone's going for grants, because our knowledges need to be supported. So, yeah, I really enjoyed today. Thank you.
I was just going to add too, I think, what's fascinating for me is the dissemination of research in alternative ways. And you're right, I think that we need to start stepping up our game and applying for as many grants as we possibly can to try and fortify the spaces that we already see and understand, and get to other people outside of our Indigenous lives to understand the sense of urgency, especially with regards to, say, that project. I don't think it's necessarily something that we can keep putting off. There's a rising waters every moment, so being able to do that in a really artistic way, so you actually reach more of an audience, but as well as that, having to apply for those grants and which unfortunately does sort of give it more credence, give it more officiousness, I guess, to government. When they see that, then they go, oh, okay, well, maybe we need to start thinking about this. So, yeah. Anyone else? Yvette?
Yep, so Yvette Rowe, I think the discussion about KT knowledge translation is, I think, caught in the last slide, which is about flipping the narrative. And I guess in the sense of our training as researchers is that we work out what is valued as legitimate, robust knowledge. And we're trying to fit this criteria, which is set by a university or a pass or fail or a criteria. And I think what we need to do as researchers and community is that our knowledge is far-reaching. And we've actually, that institute has to sit our knowledge base. And instead of using them as the default sense of right, wrong, robust, validity, propensity, probability, we need to say our knowledge system is everlasting. And these institutions are very new concepts. So we have to flip about what is the genuine knowledge, but we also have to have rigour and those key concepts in our research and our knowledge. So often we need to work out what is the default that we're referring to. We need to base our knowledge in our set and get them to refer to us. And I think that's a whole discourse about our research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think often institutions try to sort of pen us in, think about, really, all of us are multi or interdisciplinary because we come from a whole heap of different places. There's a whole heap of different cultural interfaces there just within our own families and our own sort of levels of education. Getting institutions sometimes to see that and not sort of just focus on one thing. I know for myself, my own personal experience, I wrote about women's leadership and, the university that I was at previously was like, well, that's got nothing to do with health and well-being. What are you talking about? So, having to sort of unpack these things that we kind of just accept. And I think often it's hard to sort of be constrained by some institutions, but I do think that institutions are starting to sort of see that and broaden their ideas a little bit more. Anybody else would like to share? Oh, we've got one over here.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name's Ali Drummond, Miriam and Woodley men from another Queenslander and Torres Strait Islander. I'm also on the board of directors for the Lowitja Institute, and I've just been so blown away, I think, by the presentation today, knowing that the organisation facilitates and helps knowledge like this, conversations like this take place. So yeah, just sitting here and just blown away, just amazed. Just a couple of comments on the presentations. The first one, I'm across the river from Mana in Brisbane, so I work at QUT as a lecturer. That's my day job in the School of Nursing. Deadly to hear about the voices of men coming out when I think, historically in governments, when we talk about childbirth, it's the narrative's always about women and children, and men are just left out. So it's really deadly, and had me thinking about when I took part in that Twitter response to Bill Leaks, and put a photo up of my dad and my grandfather at my graduation, which is really, really cool. But yeah, I think that talks to things that we could do much better, I think, especially enforcing how we see health, how we see well-being of our families, as opposed to that individual approach that biomedicine takes. That second presentation was mind-blowing. I'm using both yarning and Dadiri as methods within my PhD, so I'm also a PhD candidate. And so you've given me a lot to think about in regards to how your presentation informs my own research. And listening, I think I was thinking about these language classes I'm doing at the moment, Mobilization, a language of one of the Torres Strait Islands, and not my mother's or my father's. And being present is something that comes through in the learning, listening, feeling, knowing the wind directions. And sort of this takes me to the last presentation, where in one of the classes we were talking about climate change and the impact of climate change on seasons and how that impacts on our ability to maintain our language. Because language is associated as well with seasons and the weather. And if that changes, that impacts on language and that impacts on knowledge. So it goes, I think that impact of climate change goes beyond just the immediate impact on you know, where we live physically in our islands. It's connections to our families, to our forebears, to our knowledge. So I want to thank all the presenters today. I thank the team at Lowitja for presenting a really good, I think, day today. And thank you, Tess, for your wrap-up as well.
Thank you. Wherever run by Queenslanders today. I grew up in Queensland, so do I. Honorary Murray. Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, we might just wrap up, I guess. As I said before, yeah, completely blown away. And what I really love, I guess, ultimately about this is that we are the keepers of so much knowledge. And it's given to us through the yarning, it's given to us through the narratives and the stories. That is our theory, it is our method, it's our complete way of being. We just need to harness it in such a way that it is translated both to government, to institutions, but also how we give it back to the community, because as you were talking about with regards to impact, what I thought was fantastic of the, if you want to call it product, that comes from research, the flyers, the evaluations, the amazing videos, the poetry, is so much. Like it's an amazing mixed bag of really exciting things that, yeah, okay, we need government, we need institutions, we need them to start seeing this stuff. But how wonderful is it to take it back to the community that you've come from? Or take it to other communities, and they see that, and they're just full of so much with regards to that, and it gives back that value that you've been getting from ancestors, and you've been getting from elders, and you've been getting from the conversations that you've been having over many years. So I guess I would like to leave you with that, and also think about the potentials of these kinds of research projects. I think it's really important that we begin to see all of this power that we have, but also how we best utilise that going forward, so that 5 years from now, our knowledge translations are quite embedded into other ways of being in Australia and internationally, so that we can be seen and recognised as a really strong and powerful part of Australia's identity, but also about our own whole culture and history. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. It's been really wonderful and engaging. I think we've got some lunch coming, have we? Yes? So we've got some lunch afterwards. Thank you very much for allowing me to have the opportunity to speak with you today as well. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tess, and thanks for sharing your reflections. Just on a note as well, I just want to say I'm very proud to hear all your knowledges, and I forgot to mention also that I'm actually from Queensland as well. So originally I'm a Juru man from far north Queensland, near Bowen. I was conscious of saying that because I know we're quite top heavy here. But I've been down here for 2 years, and I really, you can come down here and you meet mob from down here, and they're so welcoming, and you feel like you're part of the family as well. So I hope this forum has inspired more creative thinking around, targeted knowledge translation to achieve research impact. We will be developing a video from today's proceedings, and we will be publishing that video. So for more information about where we're going to publish that, you can get in contact with us or keep an eye out on our website. We have a new website, so go check that out as well. Or if you're part of our e-bulletin, we'll be circulating it through the e-bulletin. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and a special thank you to the presenters, the speakers here today for travelling from where you've come from, for the hard work that you've put into your presentation, and your commitment to my people, our people. It's really inspiring, and I hope that you all took something from this today, and whether you've taken it away and you'll think about this, you'll ponder on it, you may implement this into your everyday work commitments, or you'll just share this knowledge around. We really hope that you did get something out. So we are keen to hear some of your thoughts about today, and we will be sending a short evaluation questionnaire over the coming days, but I'm pretty sure we're also welcoming everyone to come up and do the survey with the paddle pop sticks. And remember, there's that great prize there, the painting. Yes, you have to put the paddle pop stick in. I've already put 6 in, so. No, I'm just kidding. Just gaming with you. So we'll be serving lunch soon. So take this opportunity to have a yarn, talk about today's proceedings, and share your knowledge as well. Also, at the question time, thank you to those who had questions and shared your knowledges as well. And I'll just close on a note that we really appreciate you all coming here today. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at our next Knowledge Translation Forum, or even better, our conference. Which is in June 17, by the way. So get in quick because the ticket's nearly sold out. Thank you all. Cheers.